Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's a 2026 Chevy Colorado. But more specifically, this is the TrailBoss trim level. So it's one of the most off-road capable mid-sized trucks that you can currently buy, and it's in a color that Chevy simply likes to call black, which really doesn't have a lot of metallic flake in the paint, but it is quite shiny, and I think it fits this TrailBoss trim level quite well. So while this is one of the most off-road capable and practical mid-sized trucks you can currently buy, it's not perfect. So today I'm going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of the 2026 Colorado to help you guys at home decide if it might be the right mid-sized truck for you, or if you should look at the competition. So today you can expect to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts. And huge thanks to Twin Falls Chevy for letting me borrow this one for the day. I'll link them below if you're interested because they sell below MSRP. They'll ship anywhere in the country. And with that said, let's dive right into this review. And thank you so much for watching car videos on YouTube. But if you get anything out of my video, you enjoy the Colorado, or you like my video presentation style, please be so kind to consider liking my video. Basically, that lets me know to make more stuff like this. It helps the video get shared, but it'll also help you by having YouTube choose to show you more stuff just like this. Thank you. I've always found the Chevy Colorado to be a pretty interesting truck. It's hard to believe that these have already been out for over 20 years because the first Colorado came out for the 2004 model year, and it did replace the compact truck, which was the Chevy S10. Those things are little, especially by today's standards compared to this. The only configuration offered on the Colorado for this third generation is the full four-door with the short bed. Kind of interesting. But anyways, the first generation of these actually spanned for a number of years, and they had 3 engine options. You could get an inline 4-cylinder, an inline 5-cylinder, which was the same engine found in the H3 Hummer, but you could also get a V8 for a number of those years. And then the second generation of Colorado is also pretty competitive with a 300 horsepower V6 and a Baby Max turbo diesel engine. Pretty interesting. And now for this third generation that started for the 2023 model year, what you get is the TurboMax, which these did have a few different power levels for the first couple years of this third generation, but now only the full-on TurboMax engine is available. The 310 horsepower, 430 pound-feet of torque, which is absolutely phenomenal. I can't believe that this now makes as much power as the old V8 and a heck of a lot more torque. Pretty interesting. But while doing all of that, while looking aggressive, having the wide stance, being the off-road trim level that the TrailBoss is, these are still assembled in Missouri, so they are homegrown, built in the United States. They're also sold in Canada though, but for the United States market where I am, they do sell nearly 100,000 units every single year, so they're not quite as competitive in their sales compared to the Tacoma, but they are ranking up. They are doing pretty good, especially compared to the Ford Ranger that has made a return a few years ago. So this truck really offers a lot. If you want a work truck Colorado, it's going to start in the low 30s, but keep in mind that's for a 2-wheel drive work truck variation. This TrailBoss is the third highest trim level. It starts about $40,000. The way this one sits with a whole bunch of options, it is about a $47,000 vehicle before the Twin Falls Chevy discount. Before $47,000, what do you get? You get a mid-sized truck that has some of the best capability of any mid-sized truck currently sold. So this one has just over 30 degrees of approach angle, a minimum of 9.5 inches of ground clearance. Part of that is due to the fact that it has a 33-inch dueler all-terrain tire, which looks very aggressive and really fills up the wheel well quite well. But then even with that big wheel, it still gets up to 22 on the highway. This vehicle with a few hundred miles on the odometer has actually been getting over 18 miles per gallon. And while it only has a 5-foot bed, it still has a 1,548 pound payload capacity. It still can tow 7,700 pounds. And if we look on the interior, if we look at some of the other options it has, it's not a top safety pick. I'm not even sure that this will be a 5-star crash test rated vehicle for this year, but it does have blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, and although the lane keep assist does not work best in class and keep you centered in the lane really well, it still keeps you from bumping out of the lane most of the time, especially for 15 or so seconds, as you guys can see right here. But beyond that, it even has a leather-wrapped heated steering wheel. It has leather-wrapped heated power front seats, but unfortunately, even for about $47,000, the Colorado still has halogen headlights, which I know I've knocked in other videos, but it's not just my opinion. I do a lot of nighttime driving, and halogens are just not bright enough at night to see animals on the road with enough distance at the speeds that most of our highway and interstates are, and even IIHS says that if your headlights are halogen, it's a poor rating. Unfortunately though, even the LEDs offered on the higher trim levels like the ZR2 and the Z71, those are only an acceptable rating and not even quite a good one. So I do think that Chevy could add a little bit better lighting to the Colorado, but holy cow, is this a good looking midsize truck that offers quite a bit for about $47,000. And because this is a midsize truck, it fits really well in the average size parking space. It's easy to maneuver around town, but it's still big enough and stable enough, even with its height, to be stable at highway and interstate speeds. Overall, it's a little bit less than 18 feet long. The wheelbase is nearly 11 feet though, which is fantastic. And then it's about 6.5 feet wide, about 6.5 feet tall, so it really adds to the aggressive stance that this offers. The bed is about 5.1 inches right there. And then it weighs about 4,600 pounds. It just depends on how these are configured because the engines and the transmissions are all the same. It just depends on what options you have, what wheels you're rocking, and all of that stuff. But then the payload capacity, like I mentioned, is almost 1,550 pounds. It can tow up to 7,700 pounds. These have anywhere from 7.9 inches of ground clearance if it's a work truck to about 12.2 if it's a ZR2 Bison. And then this has a 342 final axle ratio, a locking rear differential, and it can do a full circle in a little bit over 40 feet. And then the last couple things to mention out here is the gas door is located on the driver's side when you lock the vehicle. Unfortunately, the gas door does not lock, so the bumps might try to siphon some of your 21.4 gallons of gas. This thing though, even with the 33-inch tires, is somehow still rated for 17 city, 22 on the highway. So your max road trip and range could be as good as about 470 miles, which I think is pretty impressive. And then you have a 275, 60, 20 wheel and tire. Personally, if I was going to buy the TrailBoss, I'd rather have the 32-inch tire that still has a little bit more sidewall and 2 inches less of rim. But anyways, at least it has a matching spare underneath the bed. And then this is your key. You have lock, you have unlock, you have remote start, and you have panic button. But you are going to have to push some buttons or pull the key out that's hidden in the remote because this TrailBoss, even at $47,000, does not have proximity key features anywhere to lock or lock it, which is kind of sad. And I have to say, that is some shiny black paint. It's almost as shiny as the screens that you'll see on the interior. Kind of interesting that Chevy is loving shiny surfaces these days. But the door panel, it's kind of the cheaper truck-like materials. They're gonna age really well. In 20 years, this door panel is gonna look the exact same, assuming nothing really dramatic or traumatic happens to it. The visibility through the window is pretty good. The side mirror though, it looks very sporty, but it's not as tall as I would like it to be. But there's not really a whole lot to talk about on the door panel. You have the upper storage for your keys, for your wallet, whatever you want to store in there, and I actually like that feature a lot. But because this is the TrailBoss with a lot of ground clearance, some of you guys might want to consider getting a running board or a rock slider that has a step on it, because that's a big jump to get into the vehicle, especially where it doesn't have an A-pillar handle, which is kind of sad, but it does have all-weather mats, or at least optional. These are cloth mats, it looks like. You have rubberized pedals, OBD2 port. You have the hood release. You have the trailer brake, the dashboard lighting, ventilation. No transmission tunnel storage on this like some full-size trucks have. And then you have the heated, powered leather driver's seat on the seat rails. You could maybe store a tiny bit of stuff under there. But overall, this seat is actually pretty comfortable. And the bolstering, it's not very aggressive. So people of a lot of different body types are going to fit in here. But if you are someone smaller, you are going to slide around just a little bit because they're not going to hold you in place that well. And then you have an incandescent light up there and no sunroof up top. Sitting inside the TrailBoss, it's kind of interesting how many nice materials this has. The leather-wrapped heated wheel, the leather-wrapped seats. Honestly, for being the budget off-road truck trim level, you'd expect these to all be cloth, more of a polymer steering wheel. But I'm not complaining. For me to test drive this for the day, it's a nice vehicle. Everything's pretty much soft touch, even though it doesn't look as fancy as some other vehicles, some other trim levels. It still feels nice. Fires right up with the push button start. You have the basic heads up display, if you guys can see that right there for some of the safety features. I love that you still have physical HVAC controls, so right away you can turn down the fan speed. I just don't love how bright and reflective these screens are. Right now I'm kind of sitting with my back to the light. I'm in a shadow a little bit. But sometimes there can be a lot of glare off of these screens, so test drive one for yourself, see what you think. But even after 220 miles of range, this thing still has over 100 miles of range. And I've been kind of having some fun with it, so the MPG has certainly dropped down from when I first got into this vehicle. The horn, it's pretty good. You have cruise control on the left, heating wheel, and options to change your infotainment screen in the center. and your voice and volume on the right. You have the turn signal and the wiper integration. I don't really like this turn. I'd rather it just be its own stock on the side, but you get used to it. I also wish that these had a bigger storage tray like the full-size trucks. I mean, there's room for it, but at least it's there. Just don't forget it's there, because from my point of view, it's behind the screen. I still don't like that you have to turn the headlights on from here, but most people, I do totally understand you're just going to leave it on auto all the time. I just like to be able to have that on a dial or a stock. And then again, HVAC controls. This does have auto start stop. You have to turn on lane keep assist. That was turned off when I got into the vehicle. You have a few plugins. You have a wireless charger, which I'm pretty sure is even on a no options work truck. You have your drive modes. This does not have a sport mode. It does have an off-road mode. It's kind of delayed. It's not responding. So let's go through this. Stay in demo mode. Okay. Now it's going to work. It's too bad that they didn't change the paint color to match your actual truck. Anyways, you can go into 4 auto, 4 high, 4 low. 4 auto, though, is actually really cool. I like that feature a lot. And then you have the cameras. This has a 360-degree camera. You can go into traction control from here. The parking sensors, you can change your view. You can even leave these on while you're driving, which is some of the coolest things. I love that Chevy trucks let you do that. Electronic parking brake. You have some cup holders, and if your phone's thin enough, you can fit it right there, which is really neat. And then you have a lifty tray. No plugins, though, or anything in there. But overall, this is actually pretty nice. And then some lighting right here. It's just a manually sliding window in the back. There's no power controls for this one. And then no lighting, even on the TrailBoss. That is sad. That's what the work truck had. This also doesn't have an extension or slide. So again, another spot where Chevy decided to save a little bit of money. Anyways, let's hop out and into the back. The back of the Colorado is a nice place to be. This is one of the few mid-sized trucks that have vents off the center console. The door panels also open up pretty big. Just be careful that doesn't hit the car next to you. And remember, it is going to be about 2.5 feet to get up to where your foot has to be. So hope you've been exercising, because that's what you're going to need, especially because this does not have a B-pillar handle. But the door panels, they all look about the same, a lot of the same plasticky materials. And then there's a little bit of legroom. You can lift up the seat, get to your storage and your tire changing tools. But once I hop up here and I try to avoid hitting my head on the roof of this vehicle, I only have a little bit of room in front of my knees. Cup holders, a phone holder, which is really nice. Vents again, no armrest or anything, even for almost $50,000. Again, there's the incandescent. My headroom is okay, though. You can see there's a little bit of a cutout here behind where the power moonroof would be if this offered that. And overall, this is actually pretty decent for a mid-sized truck. I feel like this is better than they used to be, even the last generation. So I can't complain too much. Vents, though, is something that every 4-door passenger car or truck should have. And surprisingly, a lot of them don't offer that. So kudos to you, Chevy, for offering that. I think I can forgive some of the visor issues and the lighting issues up front because we have vents for the backseat occupants. Anyways, let's hop out and I'll show you the bed. Back here, I love the stance of the Chevy Colorado. I think that the Chevrolet stamped into the tailgate, kind of bulging out, looks really good. I love the fenders. That even though the plastic fenders flare out, so do the bedside panels. So does the sheet metal right there. Seriously, there's a lot of three-dimensional aspects to this vehicle. You even have a huge step. It can easily fit my regular shoe. You have a little bit of a handle right here, a little bit of a graphic on top of the bed. And even though the key is hidden in the remote and you have to lock it that way, you can't just lock it by locking the overall vehicle. It still is dampened. Unfortunately, though, for 47 grand, you still don't get a free bed liner. You have to pay another probably $400 to $600 or more for that. But you do have some tie downs on each corner. And then this vehicle, the bed, is about 42 cubic feet, which is a pretty decent amount of storage. That comes from a 21-inch height, 45 inches between the wheel wells, about 58 inches between anywhere that's not the wheel wells or at the maximum. And then it has about a 61.7-inch length. So basically 5 foot 1 inches. And then you have a 400-watt outlet right there if it was a higher trim level. That's just a blank. It's kind of a surprise, a disappointing surprise. I wish Chevy at least added a little bit of storage right there for some outdoor components. Anyways, you do have a meter stick right here, which is included for free, and I'm pretty sure these can lift up if you want to unlock them, and then you can fold it up to help hold some lumber in place, or maybe there's a little bit of storage in here too. There probably is. This is one of the few trucks that, in my opinion, looks good from basically every angle. But if we come around to the passenger side and we open up the door, again, you just have a non-painted handle. Door panels open up very large. Manually adjusted seats. You again just have the cloth foot liner, no all-weather on this option. It's kind of thinking of the Z71 I drove a couple weeks ago. That thing had all-weather mats. And then no transmission tunnel storage or above the glove box, but at least my backpack's enjoying the heated seat function. And then the glove box, it's adequately sized for this class of vehicle. I do just wish you had a little bit more storage up front. But if we come around to the front, we pop the hood, I'll show you what the TurboMax engine looks like. Under the hood is an inline 4-cylinder, 2.7 liters of displacement, TurboMax full output power engine. So it makes about 310 horsepower at 5,600 RPM, but a whopping earth-rotating 430 pound-feet of torque as low as 3,000 RPM. So it's not as torquey down low as some other smaller turbo engines. This with the bigger turbocharger, it does have to rev out just a little bit to build some more boost from the 2.7 liters of displacement, but the turbo is right there on the passenger side. You could admire that thing all day long. This does have, I think, about 35% thermal efficiency, which is kind of middle of the class and better than vehicles used to be for how efficient they were using their gasoline. But you have the battery, some reservoirs, a fuse box, the air in filter. Honestly, guys, I bet, even though you can already hear a little bit of turbo spool, especially in first gear, if this was replaced with, say, a factory, carb legal, all that stuff, cold air intake, I bet that turbo would seriously sound so good. Plus, you'd be able to see a lot more of the accessory drive, the alternator, the serpentine belt, all that stuff. But honestly, this is a smaller engine. It fits really well in the engine bay. It's easy to work on. Sure, you might not get an engine cover anymore, but you can see the coil packs up top. You can see a lot of the mechanical components. And honestly, I think this would be a very reliable powertrain, one that's easy to work on. Although this has the 8-speed automatic transmission, this 2.7 and 8-speed automatic only has the regular 5-year, 60,000-mile powertrain warranty. Unlike the exact same powertrain in the bigger, heavier Silverado, those have a 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty. So it's too bad that Chevy didn't offer a better warranty on this platform. But honestly, I'm sure this is going to be very, very reliable, especially if they can manage the much bigger Silverado. Anyways, let's drop the hood and take it for a drive. Initial driving impressions of the 2026 Chevy Colorado. Let's get up to speed. Honestly, the way I want to drive this truck, I don't think the 18.2 miles per gallon is going to stay that high for much longer. When I first hopped into this, though, it was 18.4, and that's after 220-ish miles of driving, which is pretty impressive. I love that you can have the cameras on all the time, and this TrailBoss does have the 360-degree cameras. But overall, visibility is pretty good. For being a mid-sized truck, I would say that the windows are pretty large, but because you do have the hood bulge in the front, and it does have a very aggressive front end with a very parallel to the ground hood, you really can't see that close to the front of the vehicle, but you can see fairly close to the side of the vehicles. I've always knocked and I've always complained, though, that the side mirrors on the Colorado are not very tall, so you really can only angle them to see either distance far away or low to the ground, but you can't really see both like you can on some other vehicles. The steering wheel on this one is leather wrapped, it's heated, feels nice, so do these seats, and when you get on the brakes, there's only a tiny bit of nosedive. It's really not too bad for being a body-on-frame vehicle. Two-wheel drive, back up to speed. This TurboMax engine seriously feels really stout. It feels kind of like a diesel. There's a lot of low and grunt. 430 pound-feet of torque hits you pretty decently. I don't know that this is the fastest one in the class. I've tested a Ford Ranger XL faster than this. But for being, you know, the standard engine now, this is actually pretty impressive. I don't think the speakers are very good in this one. I think they're very much just on average with the lowest grade speakers you could usually find in a vehicle like this. They're not upgraded like the Bose system I had in the Z71. I don't know if that video is posted yet or not. Those definitely sound like an upgrade over these. But overall, it's a pretty nice place to be. I also wish we didn't have the huge screens. There's so much glare when this vehicle is in the sunshine, and it can start to try to blind you potentially. But overall, this is such a cool vehicle. Probably the best looking mid-size truck in my opinion. One of the funner ones to drive, and has higher capacities, good payload, good towing. This thing seriously is a little workhorse. And it's also pretty quick. So with that said, let me get to the private road and I'll show you what this thing does. 0 to 60. 0 to 60 in the 2026 Chevy Colorado. Keep in mind, density altitude is almost 6,000 feet, so we're over a mile above sea level. This vehicle is down on power, probably 7 to 9%, even though it's turboed. But we're in 4-wheel drive auto, traction is off, and it's in normal mode because there's no sport mode. I'm gonna do a brake rev, and let's see what this thing can do. Not bad for a mid-sized, off-road focused pickup truck. True 0 to 60 came in at 7.65 seconds. My final thoughts of the 2026 Chevy Colorado TrailBoss. Personally, I really like this vehicle. I think overall it is engineered well. And now that it's been out for a few years, I think a lot of the bugs are worked out of it that forum owners used to talk about. This vehicle is awesome. I do have a few concerns, as I've mentioned before, but they mostly relate to safety, not the capability. I just want safer headlights. I want safer side mirrors. Sure, you could go aftermarket for all that stuff, but at $47,000, I just don't think you should have to pay any more for that stuff. Maybe I can understand paying more for the bed liner, because maybe not everyone wants or cares about a spray and bed liner, so sure, that saves a little bit of money across the board. But overall, this vehicle is really fun to drive. Mid-size trucks are awesome. They're just so much more nimble than full-size trucks. Being about 1.5 feet shorter and having a few inches less height, few inches less width, but having the same or more ground clearance than the average full-size truck, it's extremely capable. It's extremely well focused for what it is, being a mid-sized off-roader. Sure, mid-size trucks, full-size trucks, in general, trucks are not the best off-roaders because of the long wheelbase, because of the poor breakover angle. But this thing, it solved a problem with the front approach angle. 30.5 degrees is fantastic. Having the short bed, sure, the departure angle might only be a little bit over 20 degrees. It might not be fantastic, but it's still decently capable. Having almost 10 inches of ground clearance, a 33-inch tire, and still getting 22 on the highway is totally fantastic. This is a fun truck to drive. I highly recommend you test drive one for yourself if you are in the market for something like this, or the GMC Canyon, but also test drive the competition, the Tacoma, the Frontier, the Ranger. Make sure that you buy the right vehicle for you, because I'm just one random person with one random opinion, and this truck overall feels very stout, very impressive. I like it a lot. But anyways, guys, if you get anything out of this video, please consider liking this video. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Check out the Twin Falls Chevy if you haven't already, and I hope to see you again on the next one. Until then, see you guys.